So, looks like Vegapunk may be joining the Straw Hats. Welcome back to the Straw Hat Duo. My name is Charlie, and today we're going over One Piece chapter 1067, titled Punk Records. This chapter starts out with Caesar and Judge on the cover. They are fighting, it seems. It's Germa 66's Cold-Blooded Voyage, Volume 24. I forget who you are again. Who are you again? Judge versus Caesar. It seems like Judge forgot who Caesar was, or vice versa. Who knows? We start out with Bonnie yelling at Vegapunk. She's like, hey, what happened to your big head? It used to be giant. Now it's just like an apple top. Vegapunk's like, yeah. So I cut it off. It was getting too big. They're like, wait, we're not talking about hair here. This is your skull. He's like, as I recall, it was almost as tall as a giant when I met you. Jinbei, he's like, I heard rumors about it being big. Bonnie's like, yeah, it was like a balloon. It was huge. And this is where we figure out why. Vegapunk ate a devil fruit. It's the brain fruit, which it's Nomi no Mi. I guess Nomi is brain. So Vegapunk gets tongue-tied saying that. He's like, nom Nomi. Nomi. He's like, yeah, pardon me. I bit my tongue. I meant to say I'm a brainy human because I ate the brain fruit. It allows me to memorize an unlimited amount of knowledge. So that makes sense with the books. He was able to memorize and just read all of the books and not need to refresh himself on it. It's made it so that his brain can grow to the size that it needs to store all the information. He's like, having an unlimited data bank is a handy ability for a born genius like me. So the brain fruit isn't the only reason he's smart, it just adds to the reasoning. But now he pretty much has the world's largest brain that continues to grow. Chopper at this point, he's like, wait, so you have a bunch of medical knowledge too, huh, Dr. Vegapunk? And Vegapunk's like, yeah, of course I do. It's knowledge. Knowledge is, his middle name. Luffy at this point goes with the obvious, hey, so are you dumb now that you cut off your brain? Vegapunk's like, yeah, don't write off a genius yet, kid. This apple here, it's actually an antenna. So what it is the apple that's on his head is an antenna that goes back to his brain, and it transmits data back and forth. All of the other Vegapunks will dump all of their knowledge in the database once a day, and he'll be able to receive all that knowledge. But the brain is actually in the top of Egghead Island on Punk Records. Vegapunk's like, there's no harm in me being away from it since the antenna can pick up the brainwaves. So he's figured out a way to transmit his brainwaves. That's a strange form of telekinesis. Then he goes into saying, I have 6 clones that all dump the knowledge in, all 6 of the Vegapunks. That's Shaka, Lilith, Edison, Paragathus, Atlas, and York, which is, in this order, Logic, Evil, Flare, Wisdom, Wrath, and Desire. Jinbei at this point gets confused. He's like, wait, so does that mean you all share the same brain? I find it difficult to wrap my brain around this. Vegapunk breaks it down a little bit easier. He's like, yeah, just think of it as sharing the same library. If I could let everybody in the world connect to my brain, all of humanity would have access to my knowledge. And if the population went to update Punk Records themselves, it'd create a sea of information that'd surpass even what my brain could accomplish. Humanity would share one mind. Chopper's like, so that means I'd be able to study medicine from everywhere in the world? Vegapunk's like, yeah, that's exactly what that means. Yeah, everybody would know everything in all sense. But that would also mean there'd be no uniqueness of anybody's knowledge at that point. So Jinbei's like, I could see a conflict with that if everybody shared the same brain. Conflict of ideals would come into play. Fishmen and humans, for one main thing. He doesn't say that, but that's a good example right there. I mean, fishmen and humans, up until recently, didn't really get along, and even still, there's prejudice. Just look at Horty versus the humans and the celestial dragons to Hachi back in Sabaody. Vegapunk's like, you're a sharp one, Knight of the Sea. He doesn't address him as Jinbei, he addresses him as Knight of the Sea. Science would never progress if we spent all that time worrying about conflicts like that. As in, it's a lower intelligence issue. Once you get to a upper intelligence, it's like, there's no point in having a conflict like that. So at this point, Bonnie's like, I've had enough. Tired of this. I don't care about your backstory. I don't care what's going on. Grabs the lightsaber that she had and tackles Vegapunk, pushes him over, steps on him, and has the beam sword ready to, pretty much chop him up. At that point, she's like, that's your problem, Vegapunk. You shrug off sacrifices, such as the sacrifices of the fishmen, stuff like that. She's like, shrug off sacrifices in the name of progress. That's why my dad's been turned into a heartless weapon as the pacifista. When she turns on the beam saber, which is what he calls it, he's like, stop it, Bonnie. That beam saber is defective. She's like, yeah, give it a rest. I know it cuts well enough. I tested it earlier. Turn my dad back to normal. And she's like, even if you think about saying no, Jinbei, he's like, don't be hasty, Bonnie. Killing him would make you a lot of enemies. Hit the off switch, Bonnie. At this point, Vegapunk's like, it's defective. Not in the sense of it doesn't cut, as in it attracts an absurd amount of insects and bugs to it. And all the bugs start to flock towards the beam saber, and Bonnie freaks out. Bees, beetles, all kinds of things. She ends up fainting, foaming at the mouth, just terrified. Luffy grabs a beetle. He's like, hey, check it out, Bonnie. It's a giant stag beetle. Chopper's like, yeah, this isn't the time for beetles. She fainted, Then Vegapunk sits up and he's like, it makes perfect sense. Of course, Bonnie wants me dead. It's ironic that one of my many failures saved me. Speaking of which, you guys were recently in Wano, right? This is where we figure out why Momo's devil fruit is a failure, and it is hilarious. He's like, you wouldn't happen to know whether a dragon just like Kaido really appeared there or not. He's talking about Momo, obviously. Luffy's like, Momo, you're talking about him. He's the shogun of Wano. Vegapunk's like, I suppose he ate the defective fruit I left on Punk Hazard. Luffy's like, defective? What do you mean defective? Vegapunk's like, yeah, that was an artificial devil fruit I synthesized. I made it after 20 years of researching Kaido's lineage factor. It cost countless resources, but I couldn't quite get it right. He's like, oh, so that's why he's the same as Kaido. But it worked out just fine. He could still spit fire, and he's super strong. Guardian deity of Wano now. He's like, you really made it awesome. And Vegapunk's like, and his color? Luffy's like, pink. And Vegapunk just turns around and slams his head onto the ground. Says, you see? A monumental failure. Luffy's like, what's wrong with that? It's pink. Who cares? Jinbei's like, I get it. He's a genius and a perfectionist. So it is a failure only because it is pink. That's why it was labeled a failure fruit. I see no downsides in that. Who cares? He's a pink dragon. Luffy's like, yeah, who cares about that? He moves on quick. You know how Luffy is. Once it comes to a story, if it's longer than 3 paragraphs long, he's not having it. He jumps up onto the robot. He's like, oh, and what about this robot? You made it move too, right, old man? And he's like, I'm afraid you're mistaken. This is the legendary iron giant that attacked the Holy Land of Mary Joie about 200 years ago. And this surprises them. They're like, 200 years ago? And Vegapunk's like, yeah, but it was built over 900 years ago. And that just baffles him. Vegapunk continues on. He's like, its objective remains unknown. I heard that it ran out of power before it could cause any casualties. Either way, the scientists of the time were completely flabbergasted about it, so they wanted to, research it. It was a super advanced technology that they hadn't seen before. So none of them could tell where it came from or what it was trying to do. The government ordered its destruction, but the scientists couldn't help but be curious about it, so they hid it there on Egghead without government knowing. If the government knew it was there, they'd want it gone. Period. He's like, oh, and good job at finding this place from town. The entrance should look like a wall. So it's the same type of wall as what the other Straw Hats went through to get into the lab. And they're like, oh, no, we just stumbled on this place because we were all old and senile. Chopper's like, yeah, we were just playing old Lost. Vegapunk's like, that's a shame. And then we see the other Straw Hats with the other Vegapunks looking at a screen, and they see Luffy and Vegapunk and all that. Robin, she's like, 200 years ago. That's around the time Fishman rights movement started to gain ground. Here it has an asterisk. It says it might be a reference to chapter 620. All right, so I just took a quick look over chapter 620. I don't think it's an exact reference to it, as in that was Fisher Tiger that attacked Mary Joie at that time. So that was definitely not 200 years ago. Orihime was around. Roger was around during that time period. Jinbei was a kid. So that was only like 20-ish years ago, maybe. I don't remember the exact timeline, but it was not 200 years ago. So I don't think it's a reference to chapter 620 unless they go into a little bit more detail on the background of the starting of the Fishman rights movement. But again, I just did a quick check over that. I don't see the reference. This is most definitely a reference, as in a parallel. Frankie's like, so you're saying that robot climbed the red line? And Vegapunk Shaka says, most likely. And then Shaka says, I created Vega Force 1 based on what I learned from it, but I lack the scientific prowess to reverse engineer every aspect to it. It's difficult to believe that this mechanized soldier was made over 900 years ago. And Frankie's like, wait, there's something you couldn't recreate? Shaka's like, the power source. The power source, we don't know what it was. We don't know how to do it. In the past, they had a power source that would upend our modern ideas of what's possible. Then the Straw Hats, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji, they're like, well, at any rate, it's good to see Luffy, that he's okay. But who's that girl, though? And it's either Usopp or Sanji. I would imagine it's Sanji, just for the reasoning. He's like, that's Jewelry Bonnie. She's a pirate. I thought the one we saw was a little girl. But then it cuts back to Luffy's gang. He's like, and the way that Vegapunk's head works is crazy. Vegapunk at this point, he's like, I truly did a terrible thing to Bonnie. And Luffy's like, yeah, you should get down and beg her for forgiveness, you old man. Vegapunk gets all angry. He's like, you young dolt, you know anything about it. He's like, but there is something I have to give her. Regardless, I feel like fate brought you here today, Straw Hat Luffy. Can you please take me away from Egghead Island? This just kind of shocks them. And then we cut over to the sea, right? The port pretty much of where Egghead is. And we see the Cypher Pole ship trying to gain entries. This is Cypher Pole. We're requesting entry to Egghead Port. They're all pissed off at the sea creatures. They're like, what poorly trained pets? And we see 3 masked members of of CP0. Well, 4 technically. Lucci's pigeon also has a mascot. But they're like, yeah, reports indicate Jewelry Bonnie was spotted here too. Lucci's like, yeah, that pest keeps slipping away from us. She served her purpose though. Let's just terminate her on sight. So they're looking at killing just everybody on the island. The Vegapunks have a conversation. They're like, there's a government ship. They're requesting entry. It'd be bad if they found us harboring pirates. And then they're like, what does CP0 want? Why did they bring Rob Lucci? I say we just hand this riffraff over. And, that Lucci, after all, that Lucci fellow is an assassin, right? So pretty much all the Vegapunks are talking with each other, trying to go over, okay, well, what do we do? What should we do? At this point, the Straw Hats that are there with them freak out. Usopp, Nami, Sanji, and Frankie, and Robin. Robin just kind of looks shocked. Usopp and Nami look terrified, and Frankie and Sanji look pissed. They're like, what? Rob Lucci? Hurry and give us our legs back. We gotta go. Nami's like, no, that guy's still around. Can't let him in. Sanji's like, don't worry, Robin. I'll protect you no matter how many times he comes back. So at this point, Shaka goes, tell him to hand over the Seraphim and send them on their way. We're denying them access to the port and prepare to fight, because I doubt they're going to want to hear that. Vegapunk already knows that they're not there for just a friendly visit. Rob Lucci is an assassin. They don't send assassins to drop off things. So at this point, we cut over to away from Egghead Island to the Kamabaka Kingdom. The revolutionaries are like, Dragon, Kuma's acting weird. We're trying to repair him and he's just getting up and, trying to run. They're thinking he might still be controlled by the Navy. Koala, she's like, where are you going? As Kuma gets up with a bunch of wires and whatnot hanging out of him and just starts running, ripping the wires off of where it is. He's just trying to run away. Then we see Dragon and Ivankov yelling at him, going, talk to us, Kuma. What do you want? Where do you want to go so bad? The Revolutionary Army is just getting started. Stay with us. You're not done fighting. That's the end of the chapter. Dragon, Ivankov, trying to stop Kuma from running off somewhere. The narrator's like, a mad dash to where? So there's a break next week. That's understandable. We've had a few weeks in a row. Here in the US, that's somewhat handy because next week is Thanksgiving. So we're going to be meeting up for dinners and all that good stuff. So it'd be a busy time period to try and make a video. I wouldn't mind reading another One Piece chapter, but I can wait another week. This was definitely an interesting chapter. We're going to get the fight between the Straw Hats and CP0 for sure. There's no question about that. I am very curious on what Luffy's response to Vegapunk is going to be. Is he going to be like, yeah, sure, come aboard. We'll bring you wherever you want to go. Is where he wants to go to the revolutionaries. Is Luffy actually gonna, one-on-one meet his dad before he meets Shanks? That'd be interesting. I know he's met Dragon, but he's never really, been on the same island for a purpose to see Dragon. Where do you guys think this is going to go? How do you think the rematch between Lucci and Luffy is going to go? It's hard to imagine that Lucci has made the same progress that Luffy has. I feel like it's going to be more of a throwaway fight for Luffy, yeah, he'll get injured a little bit. There's no reason he wouldn't. Whenever he fights Bellamy, he gets injured. He still takes him out in one punch, and I think it's gonna be a similar situation. He's gonna take a few hits, and he's just gonna be like, you know what? No, I'm done with this. You tried to take my crewmate away, and now you're trying to kill us again. He's just gonna put him down. Obviously not kill him. Luffy doesn't kill, but I don't think Lucci stands a chance against Luffy. Luffy just beat Kaido, and Kaido literally took out one of CP0's agents in one hit. It doesn't make sense for Lucci to be a reasonable threat unless they take Luffy's crew hostage. That's the only way I could see that happen. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. Definitely seems like we're going to be spending some time with Bonnie, much like we did with Law for a while. Definitely seems like either Vegapunk is going to die here, or he's going to be on the ship with the Straw Hats. The Brain Fruit would be rather interesting for Frankie. His cyborg body would allow him to work with that. That might be one of the things that they do. Let me know what you think about this chapter. Let me know what you think the next chapter is going to be. Till then, see you in 2 weeks.